Running a business in Philadelphia takes a lot. It takes strong relationships, unique insight, and inspired leadership. It takes staying in the know and making the most of every opportunity. Everything it takes is everything you'll find at CCPA. A resource for business support, a chance to hear from experts in their field and get up close and personal with city leaders. An insider's guide to what's happening and what's next in Philadelphia. With CCPA, business is personal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see everyone here today, especially on such a beautiful day. It feels like summer outside. I'm Suzette Munley of Munley Associates and the president of CCPA. We are an intimate and diverse group of business owners, executives, and managers looking to build relationships and offer each other meaningful resources. We take pride in bringing you unparalleled access to speakers, decision makers, and leaders who are shaping Center City. We keep our members and guests informed about business challenges and opportunities in Philadelphia. Let's take a minute and touch on the benefits of becoming a member, a sponsor, or collaborating with CCPA. We think it's easiest to remember as being Center City Smart. We have signature events where you get the inside scoop on development, sustainability, exceptional women leaders, the city's movers and shakers. Marketing opportunities are available only to members and sponsors, and that enables you to reach thousands of businesses and consumers. You have access to our speakers and panelists in a way that few organizations can deliver. The up-close, intimate, and personal experience of a CCPA event is like no other. You can reimagine employee benefits available to members through Penworth Financial Services, and you can take the lead with opportunities to build your network, grow your business, and be a CCPA ambassador. So if you'd like to join today, there is a link posted in the chat. Now, if you can mark your calendars for our upcoming events, they are posted now on your screen, so please take note of those. And a special call out to our next Lunch with City Leaders with Manu Astana of PJM Interconnection. That's happening on May 12th. And he will talk about the nation's largest electric grid and what happened recently in Texas. For today's event, we encourage you to use the chat to ask questions or comment and connect with each other. And you'll also find a link to today's program there. I'd like to acknowledge our sustaining sponsor and our preferred benefits provider, Michael Craig of Penworth Financial Services. And Lunch with City Leaders is made possible by Citizens Bank and our sponsors, Arsenal Media Works, Community College of Philadelphia, Friedman LLP, KYW News Radio, Lev Lane, Post Brothers, and Visit Philadelphia. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Carol DeFries, Vice President of Workforce and Economic Innovation for the Community College of Philadelphia. She'll say a few words and introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Suzette. Community College of Philadelphia is always proud to support this series and I personally appreciate the opportunity to see familiar and new faces today. My division, I've mentioned this before if you've ever seen me, oversees the employer-facing units of the college, including our Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which serves the tri-state region, and CCPA recently held an event with them. Our Power Up Your Business program that's focused on neighborhood-based businesses and commercial corridor businesses in Philadelphia. Our Career Connections office, which is designed to help businesses find talented interns and employees from our college. And I also oversee our Corporate Solutions division, which is a single point of contact for post-secondary workforce programs, employee training, certification, testing, and continuing professional education. I wanted to give a pitch for our new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Institute, providing DEI training to employers and their employees, which has been very well received. But my division really covers a lot, and if there's anything that you're interested in, please touch base with me through the chat, and I'm happy to talk to you more about that. But today it's really my distinct honor to introduce Councilwoman Maria Quiñones Sánchez. The councilwoman was the first Latina elected to Philadelphia City Council and began her service in 2008. She chairs the council's committees on appropriations and education and co-chairs council's special committee on poverty reduction and prevention. And she is now in her 4th term, known as a tireless advocate for issues that are near and dear to the college, and I'm sure to all of you, focused on creating and preserving family-sustaining jobs, investing in a trained and educated workforce, reducing blight and transforming vacant land, keeping families in their homes, mandating ethics and transparency in government, revitalizing neighborhood economies, reforming unsafe demolition practices, and securing the rights of women, families, and workers across the city of Philadelphia. The councilwoman has been a wonderful supporter of the Community College of Philadelphia and our role in helping educate and train Philadelphians. I distinctly remember it's one of the last in-person events that I was with her when she helped us graduate 16 businesses from our all Spanish Power Up Your Business peer learning program, and have also worked closely with her on the council's poverty action plan, which helped identify the college as a key partner in helping lift Philadelphians out of poverty and into family sustaining wages. Her full biography is in the program, emailed earlier and now posted in the chat. So please join me by waving a warm virtual welcome to Councilwoman Maria Quiñones Sánchez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very, very much to CCPA for hosting me. I want to acknowledge, I think my colleague is on here. Do I see him? Councilmember Dom, thank you so much for having lunch with us. Let me recommend Philadelphia Primos. It's Primo Wednesday, so in case you haven't grabbed what you're going to eat. I want to thank Carol and Community College of Philadelphia. She knows I am such a fan of community college, and community college is work in our city, and their partnership as we work and to make it not only a free college for all, as I have publicly stated, and I was glad to hear Dr. Jill Biden speak to that, but also the workforce hub of the city as we move folks and fill the skills gap that exists. So thank you all very much. I'm going to briefly touch on why I am now in my 4th term in city council, why I came to city council, because I think it's important. Some of you know me, I've worked with you. Good to see all of you again. And for those who don't know me, I am a Philadelphia raised from Hunting Park community in North Philadelphia. I went to public schools, worked with several council people, council members like Councilmember Tasco and Councilman Ortiz. I was a deputy commissioner of elections. So I'm a little bit of a policy wonk around fair elections. Love to have that conversation. I think the last couple of years has taught us how important that election process is. I was a founder of a charter school, a bilingual charter school, actually the first dual immersion program. I'm very happy that the school district and other institutions have embraced the dual immersion model, as I believe young people should be bilingual and trilingual. We now live in a global economy. I did some work for the government of Puerto Rico and did some statewide work around election reform, police diversity, part of a lawsuit in Reading around police diversity many, many years ago. And that work and the work in Hunting Park and my Hunting Park CDC 30 plus years ago really is why I ran for city council. I consider myself an activist at heart, always an advocate and always passionate, but now an insider trying to bring some of that advocacy and some of that lived experience to government and why it's important that government work for all of us. When I got into council, one of the first things I tackled was a lot of business tax reform. Some of you participated in that process with me, worked along with, at that point, my council colleague, Councilman Green, and was the author of the $100,000 business exemption, the $2,500 use and occupancy exemption, single sales factor, which really helped us keep manufacturing the city. We had saved about, when it was all phased in, and we've been in the phase-in process for about 5 years, about $50–60 million to manufacturers who produce in the city of Philadelphia but sell in a global market. They are released from that profits tax. Again, they were global before all of us were, and where COVID forced us all to become. So I did some work in that space. And when people ask me why you represent North Philadelphia and some of the poorest communities, why is this such an interest to you? Because it was about jobs. It really was very simple. I had a huge unemployed population, but also an underemployed population, and small manufacturers who, quite frankly, when I was running for office and went to visit them, told me, stay out. Government doesn't know what we do. They don't know how we operate. But because I'm, resilient, I went back when I won and said, okay, let me listen. What haven't we done? And that has led to, I think, some of the best informed pieces of legislation that I've worked on while I've been in the city. Some of you know me in the housing space. I was the author of UPA, which really changed how mortgage foreclosures in the city, and really providing people income-based payment plans, and introduced that to the city of Philadelphia, which actually led to more revenue collections, right? Who would think that if you gave someone a payment plan they could pay, we would have a better collection rate? And we proved that to the city of Philadelphia. And then the offer of TAP, which is our water affordability that has been recognized across the country and across the world, because it really is a plan based on conservation and information and education. And so that program we've rolled out fully over the last couple of years, and there's about 60,000 people eligible. As you saw in the federal stimulus packet, there's a line item for water support, and we believe that some of the work that we've done in this national conversation has been important. And of course, I've always supported Loop, Homestead, and all of the home ownership products and legislative pieces that council has promoted. Also, some of you worked with me in the mixed income space. I'm a great believer that Philadelphia can have diverse mixed income neighborhoods, but I also know they won't happen by accident. We have to be intentional and focused in how we do that. And there's a way that we could do this where we promote and grow our city, and at the same time recognize that our strength is in our diversity, and our strength is in folks having access to all neighborhoods. And the concentration of poverty does not work for anybody in the city. What happens in Center City impacts the neighborhoods, and definitely what happens and doesn't happen in the neighborhoods impacts how Center City and the region is viewed across the country. So some of you worked with me in that mixed income space. I also have some of the most comprehensive affordability requirements in portions of my district, a 20% affordability requirement for development in areas of my district, American Street in particular, in South Kensington, that has seen an incredible boom as Center City gets built out, and it's 3 stops away from Center City. I represent 10 L stops, so transit-oriented development has always been one of the places that I spent a lot of work trying to find a balance. And then along with my colleague and others really have pushed the mayor to make a significant contribution in the affordable housing space that, as council moves along with this $400 million bond, really needs, in a COVID world, really needs to leverage our ability to create both affordable housing and affordable commercial spaces. I think that with all of the challenges of COVID, neighborhoods like South Kensington present an opportunity for folks to branch out into neighborhoods where they have a little bit more space and where we can create some affordable commercial space. I did a lot of work around procurement reform. In fact, I did some of this work when Rebecca was the budget director in the city of Philadelphia, where we thought we were going to have zero-based budgeting. I am chair of appropriations. I thought I was going to be an accountant early on in my life. I decided that I didn't want to do it, and I'm still get stuck with the numbers. As chair of appropriations, we've really helped spearhead some of the COVID relief challenges that we've had in the city, some of our budgeting challenges that we have. And this is a space where I continue to be frustrated, because I believe that there's a lot of opportunity for procurement reform where we can open up diversity and inclusion in our development and our procurement practices. We have almost 12 $12 billion capital program and continue not to meet some of the diversity numbers that we aspire to. And we talk about it, but really is about structure. It is about access. It's about debundling. It's all of the things we know, capitalizing. And I know there's some partners on here, PIDC and others, who have helped us in this space, but I think we will all agree that it is not enough. It is not bold enough to get us to a place where people really feel equity and inclusion. So I'm going to stop there because I prefer to get questions, give me an opportunity to know some of the issues that you care about. I will say this as it relates to recently downtown. I go downtown several times a week, and let me tell you, I want to see downtown recover, and I understand the importance of SEPTA recovery in that space. But I want to assure folks that, as someone who it has never shied away from making investments in downtown, I would also say to you, those same types of investments need to be made in neighborhoods. And I think if there's any time where we're going to become interdependent and we need to move away from, the single focus, if this is okay, we're going to look the other way for other things. And I think Center City has started to experience some of the things we've experienced around homelessness, around public safety, around some of the challenges that 7th Council District folks have always suffered. And I think in these discussions, as we talk about what is our expectation, I think there's a point, there's an intersection where we can say we're all in this together. Now, I love Philadelphia. I can't go downtown and be in council without being a cheerleader, because I have a district that needs a cheerleader that could present a picture of we are hopeful and we can do better. But I will say that in this next 3 or 4 years, this recovery will not happen without all of us really saying we're going to stretch, we're going to challenge ourselves, we're going to check ourselves, we're going to call ourselves out. And we're going to acknowledge some of the challenges that we've had historically if we want to move forward. And I think we can do that in a respectful way and still disagree on some points, but all agree that Philadelphia cannot go back to pre-COVID, that we really could be better. So I'll end with that. I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Terrific. I will start with a question that was posted in the chat, but people should feel free to either post there and I'll read it, or simply to unmute and ask your question, or raise your hand and then we can call on you with the reaction button. But the first question is, can you talk more about the Poverty Action Plan, the Poverty Action Fund, and with United Way, and what you think are the key next actions as we recover?
So thank you for that question. I feel like I've spent the last 2 years really focused in on poverty, and I always feel like I've always saying the same speech, but let me make this brief. We have a tremendous space of subject experts in this field, as Carol mentioned, community college and key institutions who have done this work. The idea of the Poverty Action Plan was a recognition that there are some things that government does that doesn't do well. And that we should really look at who are our partners who do this better, and how do we better partner with people who do work better? And then what are the spaces that really do belong to us because we have an obligation to taxpayers and the citizens of Philadelphia? So it's a public-private partnership. I'll tell you, there's a lot of cynics. There was a lot of whose lane are you going to get into as we talked about poverty, which for me was a little concerning, because it's sort of like, some people just want to get out of being the poorest city, right? Some people are really honest, like, Maria, I'm just tired of being known as this. Other people are like, we give millions of dollars and we just don't trust government to do work well. I mean, I was at different tables, and in all those tables, taking up all of people's frustrations and then trying to shepherd some sort of Marshall Plan, as the Poverty Action Plan is called. And so, when COVID happened, we kind of had to pivot. When we launched the action plan, we had a $400 million surplus. And all of us thought like, hey, we're going to put $100 million in a challenge grant, and we're going to work with United Way, and corporate America is going to partner with us. And then COVID hit us, right? And then we spent a couple of months saying, now we got to double down, because now we really got to make this work, right? Because we need to leverage efficiencies and really look at impacting people. And one of the first things that we had always talked about was this need, and Councilman Dom always talks about it, is, you know, the federal state benefits that we leave on the table. $450 million worth, from WIC to child credit to a whole bunch of stuff. And that was our first challenge grant that we put out there with the United Way. We're building the plane as we fly it. We're establishing the board. Council committed the first 10 million. We have about a 4 million commitment match already done. So the first leg was, how do we work with these really grassroots community-based organizations and meet people where they are, right? We've always had, you know, access, benefit, and all these other things, but it's sort of like, how do we bring all of these together? Housing resources, all of these resources. You know, for example, right now, the rental assistance opportunities that exist in the city, renters could get up to $40,000 per family, but if they don't apply, they're not getting it. And if they don't apply, we're not getting it. You know, landlords are not going to get it. So I think it was our attempt to saying, we're going to create a dashboard, we're going to create different models of doing this, and we want to be in every sector. And that challenge grant from the United Way was very unique in that it really asked folks to collaborate differently. And the three groups that they're funded are coalitions, you know, from CMAC in Southwest to, you know, Chinatown to North Philadelphia, with some of our, you know, CLS obviously, and Benefits Data Plus, who's always been a partner. But like, we are in 30 plus organizations, and we're asking them on the ground to do whatever is necessary for us to access. So that's the first leg. The next leg is going to be jobs and opportunity. And that's where the space of community college, you know, it is a known fact that it is cheaper for the school district of Philadelphia to put its seniors at community college than it is to keep them even in our own high schools, right? And we've had a successful dual admit program, but what about if we were bolder and said that over the next few years, we're gonna put 5,000 high school seniors at community college? We can't do that unless we help community college grow, right? And that means their penetration rate, their accessibility rate, you know, additional campuses, everything that's necessary for us to meet those goals. And then in the workforce space, you know, some of the unrealized things that we haven't been able to do, it's in the preschool space, right? Like really taking the workforce of preschools and, you know, women of color in this space, helping them get their associate's degree, all those other things. So, you know, whatever we do around this poverty space, CCP has to be an important component, but all of us do, because this is about creating self-sufficiency of folks and moving people. And whether folks agree or don't agree with the Fight for 15, you know, when we looked at the numbers, even if you move people to $12,000, you were still moving thousands of people over the poverty line. So there's still a lot of cynicism. There's a lot of people in these lanes that are like not willing to collaborate. So, you know, I just say that, but there have been some, you know, corporations, Comcast and others who already stepped up to the plate, Pico and some others. And what we want to create is an accountability table, right? That's what I call it. The poverty public-private partnership is like an accountability table. People who put skin in the game, people who have skin in the game, and we got to go there, not getting defensive about what we're doing, but looking for better ways to do it, more efficient models, and a deeper reach.
Dan, do you still want to ask your question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Councilman Sanchez, great to see you. Thank you for doing this program. It's so important, and you're such an important leader for us in council. Curious, as far as obviously in the pandemic, you know, small businesses are really what fuels job creation and opportunity, especially in the commercial corridors of our great neighborhoods in Philadelphia, and especially around, you know, Black and brown entrepreneurship. So just curious, what's the discussion within council, actions that council can do to try to stimulate that growth? Because it's tough. It's a lot of things we're doing in the business community, myself being Citizens Bank, you know, working on that front with the CDFIs, but it's going to take everybody, as you say, public-private partnerships and to really help make it easier to start a business and sustain and grow a business in Philadelphia. Just love to get your perspectives on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And, I had put out a public challenge to the business sector around, make a commitment on your board, make a commitment on your executive team, make a commitment around, the fight for 15, make a commitment around procurement, all of those things we need to do. And that, you, Dan, and the Chamber of Commerce really have begun to take a deeper dive about what are some of the things you can do in access to capital. The access to capital one has always been a challenge for us. Council has held many hearings around, lending redlining, access. You saw, just a couple of days ago, we had this appraisal conversation. There's some structural challenges around access to capital that we have to combat. I want to, shout out the Collective, who just recently announced a $100 million, fund for Black developers. So I think it's all of those things. Here's what I would say for council. We have some business tax levers that we need to think about different in a post-COVID world. The majority of the liability for small businesses is on the profit side. It's about 90% of their tax liability is in that space. I think we need to have a serious conversation if we really want to help businesses. If you're hiding your net profits, you're not growing and you're not capitalizing. And so we are one of 4 jurisdictions in the country that have this net income tax, and that is Washington, D.C., the political capital of the world, New York, the financial capital of the world, and Detroit. So there's clearly something wrong with that tax system and our unwillingness to move it. We got to the $100,000 exemption in 2011, 2012 as a compromise. I think there's an opportunity to get bolder and say, hey, can we do this? And I think Steve Mullen is on here. He did the research for us, and he was the former director, right? There you go, Steve. I see you. So I think that, the only reason I'm not introducing a bill of that magnitude, because I do think, and Steve has been working with us in eConsult, is we need to look at the COVID returns, really. We really need to look at, if you do this, do you do this revenue neutral? I am of the belief that there are businesses in our market who are making billions of dollars, and you'll see it as Amazon comes in. You saw it in COVID with Walmart and Target. All the shelves were empty. And I would subscribe to you that they don't pay enough because they have fancy accounting, and the only place we capture their activities is through the gross receipts. Now, if you do that, there are other triggers that happen when you do that. But I think that we're at a different place and a different time that we can make those adjustments for wholesalers, high volume, low margin businesses. We absolutely don't want to hurt our food and distribution. But if we want to help small businesses, and sending the right message is important, because sometimes half the battle is messaging. And so we all agree that sending a message that we're committed to tax cuts, but I also think that we have to send a message in a very intentional, focused way about who we want to help. And small businesses, particularly small businesses under 2 million, are the ones that could be owned by Black and brown and women businesses, and are the ones who hire Black and brown and women. So, I think we can be bolder around those triggers. But in order to do that, everybody has to sit at the table and say, this is not about my industry, or this is not even about, just the region, because I do believe the region will adjust to Philly. It's sort of like, what is uncaptured revenue, right? Because we're always talking about taxing the people that pay. What is our untaxed, unrealized tax money? And it's in that BERT, and it's in the gross receipt side, and it's by the multinationals. The feds have said it. Equal income inequality, corporate income rise has all been large multinationals. Why can't we capture that? So it's about thinking differently.
Yeah, Maria, again, I live and work in the city. So, and the other thing we have in common with Detroit is we're the two cities, Steve Mullen will verify, we're the 2 cities that rely most on business and income taxes as opposed to property taxes. And that's a really tough transition that will take years and years, but the proof has been there for decades now. And, Boston has the highest property tax rate of their receipts, and they the lowest impact from COVID. So it's a tough one, how we get there and make sure we're funding our schools properly. And so there's no easy answer to it, but it's tough because we've got to break out where we've been for the last 5 decades, right?
Yeah, no, Dan, and I think part of this is we got to fix our assessment process, right? When you can't have a study that says that there's 14 best practices and we violated 11 of them, and then get people to trust the assessment process so that you can tax appropriately, right? And I think there's some unrealized property assessment pieces that we're missing on. At the same time, I believe we can help people that we're trying to help. So I don't, but you can't get there if people don't trust. And that's, we're stuck in that trust. Just like the abatement, you know, I think there's a space for preservation abatement that I think should be more robust. We got 30,000 vacant structures. How do we better incentivize that so that it's not just new build? And if we want to keep abatement, how do we hold the schools harmless? Why doesn't the city manage that abatement process as opposed to putting the schools in harm's way? I think if we do all of those things, and you're right, it'll take us a couple of years. We build trust in, and we have a camera system and an assessment process that we agree in. We decide where we want to incentivize abatement and what kind. And I would again argue that preservation is a better utilization of it. And then third is sort of like, we're going to move in this direction. You know, again, some folks want to continue to have the uniformity conversation up at the state. I think that conversation should still continue to happen. But one of the things I've learned in 13 years in council is we can advocate to the state, but ultimately we got to make some votes locally. So I think we could do those things. And I think the data is there. And that's why, to me, capturing people who are in our market and are not leaving. If you have a property, you're not leaving, or at least you're invested. But if you're in our market doing business, we need to capture your activity too, because you're not leaving our market. I use the beer companies as an example because people are always drinking beer downtown. Bud and Coors ain't living in our market, so they can pay more.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from
Thank you, Dan.
Jonathan. Jonathan, if you can unmute and then.
Thanks, Ben. And thank you, Councilwoman. So great to have you here. Thanks for your leadership, and especially talking. I was particularly interested and love seeing, even in your Philadelphia Citizen interview recently, about how procurement is such a part of the recovery strategy. I'm really fortunate to work in the MWBE space, especially focused on Philly and Pennsylvania-based minority-owned businesses, small businesses. The ones that you said are that lifeblood. They're really interested in hearing what are some of the possibilities ahead as we recover to ensure that whether it's local tax dollars or even just the procurement chains are elevating those local suppliers, so that as the restaurants are opening, it's local Black and brown and women-owned grocers who are providing, fruits and vegetables to the restaurants, or whatever it might be as we recover, so that it's focused on a homegrown economic revitalization. And I know it's such a sweet spot for you, so really.
Yeah, no, and thanks for that question. One of the things that I've learned in my 13 years in council, it's really hard for us to challenge the private sector when we don't do things ourselves internally as government, right? It's sort of like we want to preach best practices to you, right? We want to tell Dan, hey, Dan, lend more money, provide more incentives, all of those things, but we don't do it as a government. I still think we have a lot of work to do in this space. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We have one of the highest, if not the highest prevailing rate in the country right now, right? If you look at our construction costs, they're higher than DC and they're higher than New York, right? That's a reality. We have to own that and say that is going to be a problem as we try to develop, invest in infrastructure, right? We talk about the school building situation. The school district doesn't have a PLA, doesn't have, any preference for city-owned businesses. It doesn't have any aspirational goals around minority contracting. So there's a lot of space about how do we grow our own. And I think government has to do a better job if we want to challenge the private sector. Here's where I think the space that is really difficult to do, right? And that is, it is all about debundling, right? It is about debundling contracts and saying, I'm going to pay a little bit more for this contract as I grow these businesses. And creating more businesses in that sector creates competition and keeps prices low, right? But we don't do that, right? There's about 12 major companies that do business with the streets department, the water department. They get everything, no competition. They got more work, and then they can't get it done on time because we're never on time, change orders galore. So I think that this is a space where I'd like to see government be more focused so that we can work with the private sector. Although I am incredibly grateful for the chambers looking at this and really saying we could do better on this, because it is easier for them to do it, right? We have to legislate it, sometimes we have to regulate it, and sometimes we even from the fourth floor have to operationalize it. I think we're at again, this is a different intersection in time, and this is where we have to be like unapologetic. We can do better. We need to grow these businesses, and they need a pipeline. I will tell you, my rebuild projects through the project user structure in the city of Philadelphia will turn out the best minority participation numbers. My largest project, $15 million at Fifth and Allegheny, is 89% minority and women. We can do it.
Yes, we can. Thank you so much for that.
Alan, can you unmute? And then,
Yeah.
there you go.
Oh,
Thanks,
my colleague.
Hey, council member, I don't have a question. I have a commentary. I don't know if everybody realizes, Councilmember Sanchez for me is like a mentor. When I came into council, I've learned so much from her, and she's being very shy about her accomplishments. But I will say this: there are a lot of people in council, without naming names, who throw out ideas, who have good ideas, but it's usually Councilmember Sanchez who figures out how those ideas can get done. And I can give you some examples, whether it was the eviction process or recently was the funding for the restaurants. Remember, council member, was it $10 million or 17? Yeah. She's the one who figured all this stuff out, and she should get a lot of credit for that. She doesn't give herself enough credit. I'm here just to tell everybody that you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate you, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dom from day one, was one of those at-large people that said, tell me what your district is like, and got in the car, has been out in the district, and has been an incredible ally, and that's important. I'm one of 17. I now know that, as part of being in leadership, and the council member is chair of the fiscal stability, I'm chair of appropriations, so I'm probably a little bit in the weeds with everybody because I know what everybody's kind of doing, what they're trying to move. I look at myself as the facilitator. And an executive. I was a CEO at 27. I had to learn to become a legislator, but I really want to see things get done and built. And you can't do that by yourself. In council, you really do have to work with folks. You got to learn how to understand what people stand for, and respect them when you agree, and try to respect them when you disagree too, right? Because everybody does represent their constituencies, and there's a lot of respect. So thank you, Councilman, for joining me and for all the work you've done to supporting me in Kensington and other areas. I appreciate it.
Can you share with everyone, council member, some of the challenges you're facing in Kensington, specifically on Kensington Avenue and with the opioid crisis, and if there's something we can all do to be supportive and helpful to you, because that's overwhelming what's going on there.
Yeah, and this is a citywide problem. The current containment strategy of keeping things wrapped up in Kensington and really sacrificing a community of Kensington, folks, if we don't manage this better, it will be in everybody's backyard. You saw it in your Parkway encampment. We saw it in the airport situation. We've seen it a little bit on the 676 underpass. We are very different than most cities in that we're still a pretty affordable city, right? The homelessness situation that we have is, much tied into mental health services, and it's tied into opioid addiction. But for the most part, we have a system, even though, this is why in the affordable housing space, I'm constantly pushing, right? We got to use the capacity and the expertise of the private sector to help us create the affordable units that we need as we increase people's income so they can match that affordability. But what's going on in Kensington is, it's a failed policy of, you recognize that there are people who have mental health disease who will be in a lifetime of recovery, right? And, my work with Prevention Point and Jose, when I first got elected, they were operating out of a van. They have a full-fledged health center. And in June, we will be moving them to a better location on a Episcopal campus with a shelter and some additional services. in this space, I will tell you that CBH, which is a $1.7 billion healthcare agency, our health choice organization, they have not evolved quickly enough to be able to really meet people where they are. And this is a space that I've, from transparency from their board of directors, there were 4 mental health organizations that we worked with the federal government to close because even CBH wasn't willing to hold those pill providers accountable. So in this space, we have a lot of work to do. The challenge that we have in Kensington is that is the only space, right? And this is where the race and economics matters. Nowhere else can 40 people set up outside of Snickerville and live, can totally occupy McPherson Square, which is a green space for children in Kensington other than Kensington. And so the city has done a lot of different strategies. They have not worked. Just Friday, we had 4 hours of hearings because I want them to tell me how is it going to feel different for Kensington this summer. But we have conflicting strategies in the city that have sacrificed an entire poor community that should be unacceptable to us all, because the unsheltered in Kensington are not all from Kensington. They're from all over the city, from the region, and from other areas, because we've allowed open air markets, open air drug utilization to happen in front of children. And it concerns me 10 years from now, the impact of the trauma to these children who we've normalized this behavior for. It is unacceptable, and we should measure ourselves of how we treat Kensington and how unacceptable that should be for any government.
Steve Masters, if you could, there you go.
Oh, Steve, I didn't see
Hey.
Steve. Where's Steve?
Here I am.
He moved up to the
there you
left.
go. There you go.
So speaking of Kensington, I was on a call recently with the Urban Land Institute where I got introduced to the Kensington Corridor Trust, which I hadn't known about them. And I wondered if you could share whether you feel that is that private-public partnership is successful, and if it's something that you would like to see replicated in other parts of the city. Because when I asked them if there was anything else happening anywhere else like that, they said no. But it sounded pretty transformational.
Yeah, no, they are very aspirational in terms of, how do you help leverage private capacity again, right? And build long-term affordability, accessibility, and sustainability, right? And so, when you look at philosophically where they are all the good things, and they're trying to leverage people coming in and this interest in Kensington. Like I said, there are 10 L stops. You have an industrial zone, you have a Keystone Opportunity Zone, right? We have, we didn't have a whole lot of say, but now we also have all of these opportunity zones, federal opportunity zones. And so to have an entity that could say, you can be an impact business, you can have impact, right? You can partner locally and help grow locally, I think is important. We'll need to wait a few years. I mean, I think they're maybe just starting their year 2. I think some of the right people are around the table, and it'll be up to residents of Kensington to feel that is also in their best interest. And I know they've done some of the business startup and rental assistance. I mean, again, they're in a very creative space trying to create social impact. But again, this is where public-private partnerships, people are cynical, and it's sort of like some people pay wait and see around what happens. Obviously, we want to see them be successful, just like we've worked with Shift Capital and Impact Services and others. Kensington needs that and. My role as the district council person is I try to do my best to facilitate, create spaces for conversations, sometimes even when they're uncomfortable, but also challenge folks to do more when they can. So very promising. Just like some of the CDFI work that's being done by Finanta or Community First is also very inspiring, right? The partnership with JP Morgan and Impact Services. We have a lot of interest. What we need to make sure that development is equitable, and that people don't feel we broke Kensington to gentrify it and push people out, but that there's really this convergence of accessibility to 95 and 676, the TODs, opportunities for density, smaller living, all of the things that we think as innovative and creative in spaces. And if you can keep it multicultural, income diverse, then we will be successful. But if you go one way or the other at the expense of one group, and that's what we're trying to manage. And I think that community has demonstrated that it is resilient. They are also very open to folks in ways that give the kind of disinvestment and the lack of attention that they've gotten from the city around their plight. Sometimes I'm amazed how strong they are.
Okay. We do have a question from Joji Varghese from Urban Affairs.
Where's Joji? Oh, there you go. Good to see
Top
you.
left again. Thank you, Councilmember. Long time no see.
Yeah.
Less of a question, really, more of a request. If I can connect with somebody in your office specific to housing, I have tens of thousands of dollars to give out to individuals to buy their home as a down payment. But the problem is I need to have their employer be a part of the network. So it's an employer grant. So Councilman Dom's office has been so helpful for us. I just got done with Jamie's office in West Philly, and Professor Mullen has been a part of this probably since the very beginning. It's the Philadelphia's Home by Now program. So if it's possible in the coming weeks, I'd love to connect to people in your office that can let us know about employers, because I just want to give all of this money out. I don't want to give anything back to Harrisburg, no offense. And I want to make sure, and your district in particular, I mean, Temple is great, but I think your district has a lot of employers, more small business that might have an interest in making sure their employees are going to, live in this neighborhood with this $4,000 check and another $4,000. So I would just love to get more connected to the businesses in your district if possible.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have too many anchors, but I can tell you that Cancer Treatment Center was involved similarly, and they are getting purchased by Temple, so they will be back in the Temple network. But we have St. Christopher's as they, step away from their former tenant to the Drexel Tower partnership. I think those are some of the big anchors, but send me the information directly. We have a housing counselor specifically to deal with housing, and we do quarterly meetings with our housing CDCs and counseling services, and we have an annual summit that we do around housing. This is a space where I actually you guys would enjoy this around dashboard accountability. We have a housing summit, and I put all the debt situation up on the map. And I say to folks, okay, this is your geography. Tell me how we can help. Homestead, TAP, all of those types of things, home ownership. And we've done really well with Philly First. I mean, I think I'm only second maybe to Parker's district around home ownership, Philly Home First. So there is a great interest for this. Trying to figure out how to tie in the smaller employers to that is something that I'm happy to work with you on.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. We love our anchor institutions, but we also love our small companies, our bodegas, our finanzas members. So anybody really that's a business, we'd love to help out.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Well, of course.
So I wanted to be mindful of Councilwoman Sanchez's time. I believe you have a meeting, but is there any final question? Maybe we have time for one more. Anyone? Oh, Steve, you're raising your hand.
Maybe not a question, but I'll echo Councilman Dom and others' comments. I've had plenty of occasion to work with Councilwoman Sanchez over the years. I think even for you're too young for the time when I was the last century when I was actually in the government. But on the tax issues and the business development issues and the importance of noting that they aren't silos. You don't deal with social issues without dealing with economic issues here, even though some people like to think, I don't have to worry about this. We have to worry about this, and her recognition that they do go together, including what I still think is the single best idea regarding the net income regarding the BERT here. It's passed the test of time in my book there to take a look at that. And so hopefully, as Dan and others, and as you mentioned, Maria, sometimes slow and steady can help win a race in something like this here. And so fingers crossed on that front. And thank you for the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Steve. We got to go back to that birth discussion. Yes, we do.
Well,
Barbara, thank you. Barbara Capozzi, thank you. Good to see you. She's been a trooper. One of the first public-private partnerships around housing development in the land bank. Thank you.
terrific. Well, that was great. Thanks for all the work you're doing and for the wonderful conversation. I hope we can get back. We're kind of helping to promote the Ready Set Philly, getting people back to town and getting our city, I don't want to say back to normal because everybody's talking about a new normal and better, but I want to thank everybody for coming and of course our sponsors for supporting the series so we can do these types of luncheons.